Hi friends, this is Caitlin. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm making a really fun mini scene card featuring this new stamp set from Sweet November Stamps. This set is called Spill the Tea, and the little Sweet November mice are some of my absolute favorite images. I love them so much, and I'm so excited to have a new stamp set with them featured. So this video is part of a YouTube hop celebrating that new release. So I'm going to have a list down in the description for all of the other girls participating in this hop. So to enter for a chance to win the entire new collection, so the whole thing, all you have to do is check out each video, make sure you're subscribed to everyone down there, leave a comment and like their video between now and Wednesday, February 19th. So you have 4 days to participate in the hop. And then they're going to pick a random winner, and all the rest of the details will be down in the description if you want to check that out. So the hop's not super huge. There's just, I think, 5 or 6 of us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My bad. There's 7, but still 7 videos in 4 days. You can absolutely do it. Share some love for the Sweet November girlies and get yourself a chance to win this collection of stamps because they're amazing. And it's a great year-round release. None of these are seasonal. Everything is truly a staple to have in your collection. So now that we got all of those details out of the way, let me go ahead and catch you up on what's happening on our little card here. So I did try to make a different card, and I hated it. So you'll see that I already had the gingham background down on my card front, and I have this little frilly scene and frame already die cut, and that's because I was going to use it for something else, and then that all went poorly. So I started this mini scene by stamping in the little sugar bowl mouse. So he's down there on that lower right hand corner. He's kind of hanging off of the edge. And I also stamped a mask for him so that he is closer to us. That way that spoon and cup can kind of overlap the kettle, or the teapot, I guess. And then I stamped that main image with the teapot and that little mouse holding the bag of tea. I decided to go in with a ruler to start out and mark my tabletop. And then I really wanted to get my mice taken care of before I figured out everything else that was going to be happening in this scene. So I'm going in with some warm gray markers. I am using Copic Express It paper, and I stamped my images with Honeybee Stamps Intense Black ink. Those are my go-to coloring combination pretty much all the time if I'm using Copics. And I started out with that W7, just kind of laying in my shadows, adding most of that to the outer parts of the face. I like to add a little bit above the nose for these little mice, and then kind of on the lower parts of all of their appendages, right? So the bottom of their arms, and the bottom of their legs, or the bottom of their feet, if that's what you can see. Then I blended that out with W5. I'm sorry this is upside down, but I'm pretty sure it's W3. And I'm just kind of pulling that color through. And then I brought in W00, which is very, very light, but I liked having his little face so light. And I went in with only the lightest 2 shades on the center part of his body that you can see through that tea bag. And I thought that that was nice, kind of like a vellum gauzy look without it being really distracting or overly done. I went in with some soft pinks for his ears and added little blush marks to his cheeks. And for the tea, I don't drink tea, and I'm pretty sure I don't know if black tea and green tea are actually black and green. I'd assume so, but this kind of ended up between. So I don't know what kind of tea he's drinking, but you can just tell I'm not a tea drinker from this whole thing. I just did a mix of browns and greens. For the sugar, I didn't want them to be gray because my teapot and bowl are going to have gray accents because they're going to be white. So for the sugar, I went in with some really soft E markers instead. So they kind of have like a creamy off-white look, and I kind of like how that ended up looking because they still look white, but they definitely look very different than the other white objects in the scene. And for this little mouse, I did the same blending, just making sure more shadow was like on his belly because that's facing the bowl, so he wouldn't have as much light there. And then keeping his face really light as well. And his little ears got the same pink, that R02, and then blending that out with the R01 and some little blush marks for him as well. And their noses, I made their noses dark. I don't like pink noses on mice. It freaks me out. For the metal spoon, I went in with some cool grays. And then I started shading in the white part of my bowl or my little cup and my teapot. Sorry. I'm still getting over the like cough part of this flu. Like I feel better, but I sound crazy. So I'm very sorry, but I'm already down to the wire. I have to get this voiceover done. So here we are. I use the same markers to shade in my teapot and my sugar bowl. And so I'm starting out with that C5. And as I'm going around all of the edges, I'm being sure to leave some space between my shadow and the artist drawn line or the stamped line. And that's so that I get a really nice reflective shine so that these look really glossy and more 3D. It just helps, these kinds of objects look more realistic, having that little bit of space, that little highlight right before it curves away from us. So I am going to just repeat the same color blends all the way around. I'm kind of breaking it up into pieces, but my darkest shade here is my C5. You can see there I left that really nice gap in between. That's what I mean with that reflective highlight. I also added it around, where the spout meets the teacup, and then also on the bottom part of the little spout. I'm going to blend out my C5 with some C2, and I'm going to be really generous with it on that left-hand side. In my mind, I guess the light source is kind of centered, but maybe a little bit more coming from the upper right. So I really wanted more shadow over on that left-hand side. I blended my C2 out with some C0. And then I wanted to start filling in my wood grain. So I'm going to make my own wood grain kind of tabletop or countertop here. So to do that, I'm starting out with some E44. This is like a really nice kind of neutral brown. It's not super gray or super orange. And I'm starting out with just some very loose lines, as well as kind of these oval shapes over on this left side. That's going to look like a knot in the wood. And everything else just kind of gets very loose squiggles. Sometimes I call this, feels like you're coloring bacon, like the bacon squiggles. But I like how zoomed in this is, so I could keep my wood grain really large and kind of loose and not have to worry about a lot of tiny detail. So I went E44, E43, E42, and then just a touch of 41. Then I wanted to come in with some more warm gray markers and start adding in shadows where the mouse and the teapot, and the sugar bowl and everything would be casting a shadow. So I'm laying that down, that W, I think 5 or 4, and then blending that out with those same E markers from the wood grain. I also realized I needed to kind of solidify the edge of my table, so I went over that little line again. And at the very end, I ended up going back in and adding some more dark, I think like E44 to the right hand upper part of that table. It just felt like it was floating, and I really like how it is. So if you want to see the difference, like take take a peek at the picture at the end because that should have the updated edges. Now, I am not someone who freehand draws much. Okay, wood grain and stone is about as far as I can go. So I really was pushing myself to try something new for this pattern. I'm making my own little rose pattern. And the nice thing is, if you do it like this, no one can tell you that it's wrong because it's just the pattern that whoever made the teapot put on there. So it can be as abstract and artistic as you want it to be or need it to be. So I just made a bunch of like curved lines kind of switching back and forth, hoping they loosely look like roses. And I think I did okay. They're not my proudest moment of card making, but I'm glad that I tried. And now I know where I would go different next time. I think it's that they just like look very flat at the top, like all the lines stop in the same place. And I kind of wish I had like either extended the curve or maybe just done a different style flower. But I think it's really fun to try to make your own pattern for things like that. And I think this is a great set to try it on because I really don't think there's anything you could put on there that wouldn't be cute, right? Like who doesn't love like a fun teapot? I feel like this is one you would find at like Home Goods. Like there's this exact teapot is sitting in a Home Goods somewhere in America. I feel good about that. So I added little dots to my sugar bowl so that it matched, but I didn't have to do more roses. And I'm also going to go back in a minute and add green dots as well. And I stamped my sentiment in some like medium cool brown ink instead of black because I liked how it looked with my mice. And I'm using this die from Lawn Fawn that has the scalped frame all the way around, and it cuts the scene out separate, which was nice for coloring. So I washi taped it back together and then popped my little scene up with some foam. And then I'm going to go in with a white gel pen and add in my highlights and some little highlights to like my mice's eyes. To their eyes. Here's the little green dots that I'm adding to the sugar bowl too. But then that wraps up this card. So I hope that you enjoyed seeing this sweet little scene come together. I think, I forgot. I'm adding tiny little hash marks, like hashtags, those little like, £sign marks with white gel pen to the tea bag. And I love how that looks. I think it just adds enough texture that it kind of like breaks up that tea. I love that step. There, it's so cute. That's probably what I'm proudest of on this whole card. But yeah, I hope you will take time to check out the hop. Please go check out Sweet November Stamps. Their whole release is adorable. I love Amy so much. And I hope this inspires you to make your own mini scene. I appreciate you so much for being here. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you guys soon. Until next time, happy crafting.